Hello, everyone. I'm Kristian Roberts, Director of Education at the Dallas Opera. I'm here with my fabulous colleague and co-host,
Quo Johnson, Education and Company Culture Manager for the Dallas Opera.
and we are here with episode 3 of Taking the Stage with Kristian
and Quo.
And today we want to do a little bit of a recap. First of all, let me just say thank you. Let me remember my manners. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for your feedback so far. We encourage more engagement. Thank you to TDO for giving us this platform and letting us have these conversations. It's a pretty sweet deal. So now that all my thank yous have gotten out there, and if I forgot someone, please forgive me. I want Quo to give us a little bit of a recap of last episode, because our last episode, we talked about equity, diversity, and inclusion. And we wanted to set a foundation by defining these terms, which in turn will set a foundation for what this show is going to be about. So Quo, you want to give us a recap?
Yes, absolutely. So in last episode, we spoke about equity, diversity, and inclusion, and kind of gave some basic definitions for that, as Kristian said, so that we can have a common vocabulary going forward, so that we understand what we're talking about, what we mean. Equity is pretty much achieving fairness. And it is achieving fairness by giving everyone what they need, kind of individually or within a certain group, giving those individuals what they need to participate in whatever we're offering. And in order to do that, we have to be mindful of historical context. We have to be mindful that not everyone has had the same access to resources. Not everyone has the same access to resources right now. And so we're wanting to make sure that we adjust, that we give, we take, and do what's necessary for people to be able to participate in a way that is fair. We also spoke about the differences between equity and equality and how they are not the same things. We also spoke about the fact that the equity piece is not often present in organizations and in this work because a lot of people don't really understand it, one, but then it's the hard work, right? It's the additional effort that goes beyond someone just being in the room or just getting to the room. So that's what we spoke about concerning equity. Concerning diversity, we spoke about the fact that diversity just pretty much lists your differences. And differences are good when you have differences in thought, differences in experiences, differences in background, differences in education, religion, age, race, gender, orientation. All these things are wonderful when they're used properly and when we are not going into what we call checkbox mode, where you start to just simply check off the fact that you have someone who is different and then leave it there. So we want to make sure that we're not treating people like Pokemon, like I like to say, and that we're not trying to catch them all simply to collect diversity, but we're actually wanting to use the diversity in the space to the best of our ability. And then we spoke about the fact that that can only be done through true inclusion. And inclusion is, it's kind of its root word, including others, or having a shared power in decision making. So you are sharing that power with others so that as you make decisions or as you step back or move to the side so that others can make decisions, that we are including the lived experiences and the expertise of others. Not so much that we are simply listening for the sake of listening and then turning around and still making whatever decision we want to make without considering other people. So it is important that as we pay attention to equity, diversity, and inclusion, that we're paying attention to what we are doing ourselves individually, and then what our organizations are doing. As we get to kind of executive level staff, senior staff, as we get to board, government, and leadership, we tend to lose that diversity, if you will, or we tend to kind of become, or we tend to see situations in which everybody looks the same, everybody thinks the same, everybody comes from the similar backgrounds, and there's this lack of inclusion, there's this lack of diverse thought, there's this lack of fairness and access and in making those decisions. So that's the kind of the recap of what we spoke about last episode.
So that was a great recap. And that's exactly what we talked about. We sort of call it the triangle, equity, diversity, inclusion, and how they all work together, and that you really cannot have one without the others, truly cannot have one without the others. So Quo, in our work, and I know especially in yours, because you do a lot more in this area than I do, but in my work, I've gotten the question, I know you've gotten the question, why is this necessary? You know, why is this relevant? Why are we talking about EDI? What's the deal?
We're going to start, right? It is necessary because one, is the right thing to do. You should
Amen.
not make decisions that affect other people without including them in those decisions. That does not make sense. But in addition to the fact that it is the right thing to do, we want to pay attention to what our goals are in the arts. In the arts, and then in our business, are we attempting to serve others? Are we attempting to serve with others? And in doing that, are we trying to create art for everyone? Are we trying to create an industry where everyone feels some sense of ownership? If we are, then it is important that we pay attention to the different needs of others, the disadvantages that others face, and then the very real requirement that is in place that we include others in what we're doing. Especially when it comes to the art, not just opera, but we'll use opera because we're here for opera, but not just in opera, but we have to consider what it means when you go somewhere and no one looks like you. No one on stage looks like you. No one in the audience looks like you. The story has nothing to do with you. Those who made the decisions, those who created the art, nothing to do with you. And when it does have something to do with you, you are treated as kind of a token or a subject rather than, and not so much an equal, but as a co-contributor, right? You are treated in a way that you are placed kind of separately to be observed, to be studied, and then to be misappropriated. So then it becomes insulting, and no one wants to pay to be insulted. No one wants to support things that are insulting. So it's important that as we work to create an industry where opera, where art, where all these different things mean something to others, we want to make sure that we are sharing in that decision making. We are sharing in that creativity. We're sharing in kind of the execution of what we're trying to achieve. Because once we share and include others into creating art, it becomes important to everybody, right? It becomes important to everyone who participates in it. And when it is important to you, you have co-ownership. And when you have co-ownership, you value it. And when you value it, you support it. So we want to make sure, one, that we have different stories, we have different faces, we have different perspectives, because that's what makes everything better. But in addition, that we have the support necessary to do that. And that can only come about by sharing the power and by sharing the ability and the control according to what art is created.
So yeah, I agree with that, and it's very much so. And you know, we see it throughout the business sector. You know, different types of businesses, including nonprofits. It's a big conversation that's happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
Everything from marketing to the social justice part of it. I mean, you name it, economically, the whole thing. So it is relevant and it is necessary. From my perspective, you know, I work in education, of course, and you know, in arts education, and you know, just some of the schools that we have gone to, just for small examples, you can see the inequities just right blatantly on the surfaces. You know, we'll be in one district, and we go to a school in one part of the district, and it's got everything it needs. The kids are on tablets or laptops. You know, the classrooms are clean, the teachers are supplied, have everything they need, and then we can go across town to another school and do our presentation or a performance or whatever it is that we're doing that day, and there are broken windows, you know, busted seats, books that are falling apart, and this sort of thing. And you know, we look at that and we go, how on earth can this happen? And it's something that we call historical context. It's looking
Right.
at the root and
Right.
of the, because what we're seeing on the surface there is just simply the symptoms.
Right.
And what we see a lot of times is just a matter of being in a different part of the city, a different part of the district, and a different neighborhood, a different zip code, to see that vast of a difference. And that makes all the difference in the world for kids who are trying to, and students, period, that are eventually supposed to grow up and
Absolutely.
go on to be productive members of society.
Absolutely.
And if they're starting backwards, not having all the access to the resources that they need, and their teachers don't have what they need, and parents don't have what they need to help the students, it's a very big deal.
Yes.
And that's not just in arts education, that's in education, period.
Right.
So, and there are a lot of teachers that can attest to that, and we will have a conversation about that later on with some of our counterparts, and that's another topic for another episode. But I just wanted to point it out how surface level it can look, but how deeply the implications go when that happens.
Right.
So, as far as the way it works into the world, we see all of a sudden that pipeline from the school, from school into the real world, and how that can take place. But as far as this goes in terms of COVID, because people will ask, well, we've got a pandemic going on right now.
Yeah.
I mean, why is this relevant during a pandemic? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
So yes, and I know we both have thoughts on that. Not experts, right? But it's a matter of looking at the differences and looking at the disparities that are taking place. So the negative differences, the vast or the very big gaps in between the resources that are being provided, and then those who are surviving through this pandemic in different ways. I believe it's important that we pay attention to the fact that a lot of these things are coming out of inequities, right? It is coming out of the fact that certain organizations, certain neighborhoods, certain groups have not had access to resources for a long time. This is not so much as people choosing to suffer for a long time. I want to kind of dispute that. People are not just
Absolutely.
choosing to suffer just because they like it. We're not in this situation because we like it. Or because it's multiple bad decisions on top of bad decisions. Also want to dispute that. It is a matter of the resources that have been available. When I say resources, this is health, this is finances, this is nutrition, this is access and ability to employment, right? These different things that are there. And then fair pay once you do get employment. We're wanting to make sure that we understand and we acknowledge that these things exist, and it existed before COVID-19, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing it flush out during COVID-19, as we've seen in other situations before, and it's going to exist afterwards. So while this pandemic is sparking a lot of creativity in how we are engaging with each other and how we are addressing or trying to address some of the issues, it is important to understand that this is not simply a COVID-19 thing, but that we, through what we're currently trying to do and trying to achieve together, we have the ability to begin creating solutions and working to do that, which is what this show is all about. And that we will be
Yes.
doing that through a lens of equity, diversity, and inclusion.
So absolutely, yeah, we need to take a holistic approach to this, and in order to be able to approach this and remember that this happened before COVID, it's
Mm-hmm.
happening during COVID. As a matter of fact, there are a lot of things bubbling to the surface
Mm-hmm.
during COVID that people may not have seen before, uh, but have been very, very prominent and understood by certain communities that are simply just in this thing is just things are just simply being brought out right now
Right.
because of this crisis and the amount of attention that it's getting, and just how devastating it is. But understand that it happened before, it's happening during, and a lot of this stuff will be continuing to wrestle with afterwards. And that's the reason why it's very important to take a holistic approach, through the lens of EDI, to address these issues. The other thing that I want to talk about is, you know, we talk about community in doing this work. We talk about what community looks like, what it's supposed to look like, and what are some things that you think that need to be done in order to create a true sense of community in doing
Um,
this?
Again, there is no one right answer, and we'll all have different approaches to how we create community. But I do want to ensure that as we work together, that we're doing so in truth, that we're seeking truth in a way that is healing. And in doing so, we're acknowledging that there are disadvantages that were put in place on purpose. There have been disadvantages for centuries, and they were put there on purpose. So as we move toward a sense of community in doing this work together, that we are avoiding a false sense of community or forcing people to get along just to get along, or dismissing the actual inequities that are still in place. So there's not this notion of we should just get along just so that we can feel better about it or that we can get over it. How do you get over it when you're still in it, right? How do
Yeah,
you get past something or get beyond something when it is very much still alive and well and active, and a very big part of what you do day to day? So there's no getting over it just to get over it. There is a matter of approaching these issues with grace. We always talk about grace,
mhm,
with respect, and then with truth for the purpose of healing. And if we're going to heal, then we have to do so, and we have to do it properly. Again, there are different ways that we can all come together for a communal purpose or to create collective solutions. We're choosing the healing route. Some people, you know, want different routes first and
yeah,
then getting to the healing, and it's up to you. But it's a matter of making sure that this is not used as a tool to further oppress others as much as it is a tool to
absolutely.
kind of dig deep, to take the steps one step at a time so that we can find solutions.
I absolutely agree. So it sounds to me like that's a call to action. That's a call to action for everybody. For everybody who wants to be involved and who's ready to have this conversation and ready to do some work on it. We know not everybody is ready to do that, and we understand that. But I think that's a real important part of meeting people where they are.
Mhm.
And when we talk about meeting people where they are in this, so it can kind of seem daunting, like I talked about last week. It can kind of seem daunting to people because they go, man, it's it's just been it's been going on so long. I mean, how do we do it? What's going on? I mean, how do we even begin? What?
Mhm.
So what are some like positive notes? Like we talked about positive notes, not toxic positive notes, but positive notes. So can you tell us some positive things that are happening, and positive things people can do?
Yes, have conversations. And when you have conversations, be mindful of the fact that not everyone has the same experience, right? Not everyone shares in your experience, not everyone shares in your perspective. So be mindful of that and create the space necessary to embrace that about others. And then from there, understand that you're not going to find the answer. You may not find the perfect resolution that you want within one or two or three or 10 engagements, and that is okay. It's a matter of taking it a step at a time, knowing that once again, these conversations are happening, change is happening. There are organizations, both local, national, and international organizations, working to kind of combat these issues, working to dismantle and replace some of the systems that support these inequities. So we want to make sure that we know we're not in this alone, right? And
Mhm,
then that it's one step at a time. This was built over centuries. It's not going to be undone immediately, but it is important that we take action. And when we take action, we also take accountability. So be accountable for your actions, be accountable for your interactions with others, be accountable for the organizations you support, the organizations for which you work, the organizations to which you are a patron, or you're a customer. So we want to make sure that as we're starting to understand why some things are the way they are, and then starting to challenge what we've been told about the way things are and the reasons for the way
mhm.
things are, that we again give space, that we give grace, and then that we give respect. And I think that'll get us where we need to go.
Well, that sounds like sounds like we got to put some work in, and so we'll be talking about this in upcoming episodes, getting different perspectives from different guests and such. So we'll be talking about this, and this is going to be an ongoing conversation for as long as they will have us here. We would like you to share your thoughts with us, as per usual, in the comments section. We want you to talk about some of your experiences with this. Have you had any experiences with this? What has it been like? We're here to engage with you. We're here to participate in the conversation with you. That's why we invite you to talk with us. And anytime that you have a question or anything like that, please feel free to ask it. Quo always talks about creating a courageous space, and that's what we want this space to be, because change cannot happen unless people are willing to get in a room and have those conversations that can be tough and uncomfortable, but we have to lean into that discomfort, um, while taking a good amount of self-care as well, but lean into the discomfort and make sure that we realize that we all have a part to do in this. We all can have a role in doing this. So thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate having you along. We hope to see you tune in again. Want to give another shout out to TDO and thank them
Yeah.
for allowing us this platform.
Shout out
Quo,
to
you got any?
TDO, TDO Network. Make sure you go follow all the channels.
Absolutely. All right, folks, we're going to wrap up. Thank you for joining us today.
All right.